colors. Salmon and pink could potentially be the same color.
We are having some fun, guys, as the show is about to begin here. The mics are hot, the cameras are not on. We're playing a little guess the shirt color, even though we're sitting next to each other. Keith Smith is wearing, I would say, would you say salmon?
You could say pink. I'm comfortable in pink.
No, I have no problem wearing pink. I wear pink shirts all the time.
There you
It's
go.
one of Brooks Brothers' most common shirt color. What would you say that is, Judah, as you offer some perspective? We're going to slide the mic over there. There we go, Keith. What a team player, putting the mic in front of the talk show host's mouth. Thank you very much for doing that. Imagine that.
That's a tough one to call.
What'd you say? You'd say peach?
No, it's not pink.
No, it's not
You'd
peach.
say salmon?
It's somewhere between salmon.
Well, you're the artist. You're supposed to
and
know
like
this stuff.
You, the viewer and listener, will see in a matter of moments
light
as we welcome
wine.
a panel of talented and very deep in thought proportions on a
Does he
Wednesday.
got other guests showing up today?
On a Wednesday.
Apparently, he's got other people showing up.
On the I Love Steville Network. Scott Morris is in the house. We
Thought I
love
was
when
the
our homie
producer.
Scott Morris is here. J-Dubs, we can rock and roll when you're ready, my friend. Pink.
Yes, we're on.
And we will get to these comments.
We're on our Adderall today.
Quiet on the set.
Quiet on the set. Good Wednesday morning, guys. I'm Jerry Miller, and welcome to Real Talk with Keith Smith. Thank you kindly for joining us. Great to connect with you through the I Love Seville Network on a show today presented by Scott Morris and Ross Mortgage. Think Scott Morris and Ross Mortgage when buying or selling your house, when refinancing your house, when just getting consultation when it comes to real estate financing. Scott Morris and Ross Mortgage. Judah Wickhauer, the director of the program, always ready with a quick quip, a dry joke or two, a key contributor to this program. Keith Smith, the star of the show. The show is called Real Talk with Keith Smith,
And I work for a living.
and he works for a living. He's a realtor, so if you need some help selling some real estate, think about Keith Smith as well. Gentlemen, it's a Wednesday when temperatures hit 80 degrees.
Not too bad for August, huh?
Not too bad for April. We've had some volatility when it comes to temperatures, and we've certainly had a little bit of volatility when it comes to real estate inventory. And I think you're going to shine a spotlight on that today. First, good Wednesday morning, fellas.
Good morning. Yeah, no, gosh, I don't know. Has inventory been volatile? I feel like it's been so super tight, super stagnant. At least on the number of listings. That's created definitely some challenges for buyers. Talked to a number of agents yesterday in different areas, and everybody's still kind of seeing and facing the same thing as far as getting under contract with the number of other offers they're up against. And what we're seeing go over, had one very specific scenario where literally after receiving offers and escalations, et cetera, an agent come Monday morning said, well, that was the old price, this is the new price. So it's like,
Whoa.
yeah. And, but what we've seen is, true to what we saw last year, and for those who are going through it, the key is to keep going through it and work with your team, be very targeted in what you're doing, and then look at all your options. I'm doing more 203Ks now than we were at any time last year, and that's really a testament to people looking to say, all right, look, this isn't the perfect property, but I can make it closer to the perfect property, and then I'll have an advanced amount of equity after these repairs are done also.
So we've done this a few times, but just give a high level 203K for those that may not have heard it for the first time.
So you've got two options. There's a limited option to where if we stay below $35,000 in fees and repairs, there's no HUD consultant needed. Typically, that's going to be, that's a limited amount of money as well to spend. So what you're going to get done could maybe be replacing carpets with some LVP, could be doing some painting, some maybe a few windows, some depending on what you're looking to do that's going to get the house closer to where you want it to be without an extensive amount of work. And then there's a full 203K where we can go through and do, we could go spend $200,000 depending on the purchase price in improving the property. We've got 6 months to complete the work. That can be extended. There's going to be a HUD consultant and a contractor involved in that, and we will, go through all the options and education when we go through something like that much in a more thorough process. But that's kind of a brief overview of what it looks
I
like.
don't think I've ever asked you this question. How does the appraisal process work on that?
So it's subject to, the appraiser comes through and gives an as-is value, and that as-is value is what the seller is going to be paid on the initial contract. And then there's the subject to, that subject to these repairs being completed, what the property is going to be worth after the fact.
Okay, I'd say let's mark that as the first sizzle reel right there. We should, and Keith, I know you want to jump in here.
No.
Folks talking market conditions. Where are we at right now, market-wise?
Well, I'll tell you,
it's a very moving market in real time here.
Yeah, so literally from Monday, when we did the show on Monday, as everybody who watches the show, I constantly look at the 7-day back scenario, how many's coming on, how many's going off. Just between Monday and today, it dropped from 86 that came on the market on Monday. Now we're down at 67 as we sit here today. That's a 25%, if I did my math right, that's a 25% drop in inventory. So to the volatility of the inventory, Scott was right for January, February, and much of March. It was kind of consistent, the number of units coming on. Then we shot up the last couple of weeks to some 90s and some 100 units on mark. Now we're back down to the 60s, which was more January and February. So you're starting to see this up and down, I think, on units coming on. Could be spring break, right?
Most schools on spring break right now.
Right. So folks probably don't, are not ready to go ahead and put their homes on the market. So we'll see what this time next week looks like. I think we might get a bit of a jump on that. But, I always ask Scott this question on our Wednesday shows. So how's your application? I know, contact to contract.
Check your phone.
Contract to close is a little difficult right now, but how many people are making applications now? Are they up, down?
So I like to call it, contact to contract. So that period of time from the time that they get in touch with me, get pre-approved, and then actually get under contract, there's a delay there. Contract to close, that's a time that we're trying to step up because we want to make you as competitive as possible. And what I mean by that is if speed is a necessity for the seller, 14, 21 days, we're gonna get you closed.
Whoa, stop. Did you just say 14 to 20 days?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Absolutely.
So that's a big jump because usually it's like 30.
That's impressive.
30 days is kind of, that's everybody has enough time and everything's moving. 14, 21 days is we've done all of the work on the front end and we're gonna get title and appraisal turned around and we're gonna close 3 days after that.
Wow. That's pretty short turnaround time. 14, I got to write that down because I was asked that question yesterday, what the typical close time is with you guys.
Do I want to do every single loan that way? No, but can we get it done? Yes.
Got it. So maybe we'll just stick with 30.
Yes.
How does that sound?
I like 30. I like 30.
Got
and
it,
then
got it.
and if we need to do it to win, let's go get it.
Okay, because you got me all excited. So
I mean, I'll stress everybody out of my team. They'll love that.
Is that a do it to win? Are we in a do it to win market right now?
We're in a do it to win market right now.
Okay, put that in perspective. Give us a case, no names, a do it to win case where you saw like, good God, this is quick, this is aggressive. This caught me off guard.
So, I'll say, there was aside from the escalations, what I was talking about first on the show, that was a $375,000 property that most people had, I believe, escalated up to $400. To then the agent's way of addressing that was just saying that $400 is the new price. Where do you guys want to go from here? There's another property that was $365 that had something like 40 offers on it that went well above, $415, I believe, if I had to guess. So do it to win is going to be a combination of what you put in place as far as any inspections that you want to waive or remove, how fast can your lender get it closed if you're not cash, and if there's an appraisal situation, are you paying a gap, and how much of that gap are you paying?
Great stuff right there, Judah. Let's mark that timestamp. Here's one from Jonathan. Are either Keith or Scott having deal flow impacted by availability of inspectors or appraisers right now?
Oh, wow, great question.
Availability of inspectors and I feel like I've seen more appraisers going, hey, is there anything, can you make sure that we're included in your process and add us to it? I've seen more people with the limited amount of inventory trying to be busier. So now, for inspectors, as these things are getting waived, I don't think this is a problem for them. They're doing more of these walk and talks, and appraisers are probably doing more desktops and different, not of the norm activities for them. But as far as their availability, that's what allows me to turn around things in 14 days, is that is not a problem.
Keith, for you?
So, the appraiser side of the house, we generally do not have a direct contact with that. That is usually on Scott's end, unless there's we need to get involved to help with appraised value and so forth and so on, because Scott can't do that. But I will tell you, on the home inspector side of the house, that just went through the roof. We put a cash contract deal under contract yesterday. Out in Earlysville. On Sunday, our go-to inspector, I had a conversation and said, look, buyers flying in from out of state, what do you have available the week of the 10th? I'm wide open. Contract happened yesterday. Emily reached out to him, booked. So it went from, because I couldn't pick a date, right? Because we didn't know we were going to get ratified on it, and I wasn't going to do that to the home inspector. But that's an indication of what is happening, I think, in the last couple of weeks. And on Friday, we teased a little bit on Monday. On Friday, we're going to have a little bit more numbers for it. I think quarter over quarter, you're going to see certain jurisdictions not increasing in value, and other jurisdictions going up considerably. So we'll take a deeper dive into that on Friday. I've been doing a lot of late night number crunching for it. I will just tease a little bit on that. When we were talking the end of last year, beginning of this year, micro markets matter.
Yeah.
These numbers are going to prove that.
Thoughts on that, Scott?
Sorry, I had something going on.
It's okay.
I missed a little bit of that. I don't
have.
He's used to working with ADD.
We have certain markets. Keith highlighted this.
Micro
on Monday.
markets matter.
Yeah, there you go.
Certain markets' values are dropping.
So are you seeing? Let me try it a different way. Are you seeing in your world?
I cannot say that I'm seeing that.
Yeah. So that's why these numbers are concerning me, because when you look at when CAR puts out its quarterly report, I think it's going to be shocking to people, but I think there's
because that's going to make a local headline.
It's going to make.
And it's going to make a local headline, which is different than a national headline.
So then-
and
so-
the local
And I'm trying
headline
to
is
stay
going to
in front of
have. It's going to make a wave.
And I'm trying to stay in front
So
of it.
Okay.
educate me.
I appreciate that.
Educate me, the layman. Where
It's
is
not even
this?
possible.
Where is this? No, it's not. That's a
I'm
lifelong
sorry,
problem.
that was one jarhead.
What? Where is this? Where is this softening happening?
So that's the point. I don't want to even use that word softening. So I think what's happening here, when you dig deep into the numbers, which is what I'm doing for everybody.
And we can ask Quentin Beckham and Neil Williamson, both watching right now.
Yeah.
We got folks from Long and Foster on the show, and Nest as well.
And Quentin doesn't know this, but he might get a phone call to join us on Friday, because
Okay.
I love his read on that.
QB, can't wait.
On this. He doesn't know about it yet.
Okay, well, I think he knows now.
He knows that.
Yeah.
But I think what happened is there was a bit of a hangover from November, December, that carried forward to January and February. Because when you look at March's numbers, there's a huge jump in valuation in March. It's also, I think, a matter of volume. When you start taking a look at some of these jurisdictions, like Charlottesville, for instance, is over 40% down in volume. That skews the numbers, right? So if there's less, it makes the numbers look a little bit different. But we're going to take a deeper dive into that. But I think the general point I wanted to make was we kind of called this. Some of the outlying counties, you're going to see positive double-digit increases. Some of the inner city or urban rings, I think you're going to see some negative numbers come in. But then I was just digging in Charlottesville, like Belmont. Belmont exploded in first quarter over the quarter. So where is going to matter? The number one is location. So I don't really want to get too much into it without the actual numbers in front of me because, I don't want to get accused of making up stuff.
No?
But it's.
I mean, you've been on top of it with the numbers on Real Talk with Keith Smith.
Yeah.
And they've come out earlier
Well,
than Cars released their reports.
So to your point earlier.
This is a local headline.
To your point,
Okay.
We're going to take a look at it high level on Friday on all the jurisdictions. And I just want to kind of get in front of it because I think if it's not handled a certain way, it could scare the heck out of people, and it shouldn't. This was just a little bit of a blip. You're already seeing the last 7 to 14 days prices going up. I think a lot of Scott is just talking about, and maybe the 10-year Treasury is moving in the right direction. I don't know, but that's what we're going to see. Talk on Friday. But
What
today
do you
is
think,
zero.
Scott?
I like it, and I think that local markets do matter. That is, but from what I've been seeing, at least, definitely. I talked back in December about these trends happening and how when rates were at 7%, people were like, "Well, gosh, I just can't wait for things to be lower." About going, no, you don't, especially if you're a buyer. And now we're seeing that reality come to fruition, and we're seeing more of it. The lower things get, the more competitive it's going to be, because I really believe that we're going to have to get sticking in the mid to upper fives before we can see some of that. The seller who doesn't have to be a seller go,
That's me.
why do I have to move away from this 3% interest rate? Or why not? Why half? But why would I move from this 3% rate into a 6 or 7? The mid fives, you can go, okay, well, if I can take this equity, I can put this down. I'm going up $200 a month. I'm going up
Trade the
$400
stacks
a
for
month.
2 points.
Yeah, you can,
That's what he's saying.
I don't know about 2 points. That's probably.
I mean, I'm at
the money that you
275.
the
Yeah,
money that
unless you
yeah,
have
yeah,
to
yeah.
move, you're not going anywhere. And to Dr. Lee's Sesterovich.
Well, I mean, Scott, this is a conversation my wife and I have literally on a weekly basis. It's like massive equity versus 275 trading that rate. I mean, that's the cover. We have this once a week at least, my wife and I.
So if you read some of the good doctors' writings, like Dr. Lisa Sturvin, who's the head economist for Bright, former head economist for Virginia Realtors, out there. Did I say that right?
Yeah, you did.
Look at
Very
that.
well done.
Look at that.
Keith, you're doing a great job today.
Thank
Great
you.
job
Thank
today,
you, Drew.
Keith.
Thank you, Drew. You want to follow me around? all
Great
day?
job today, Keith.
I don't think I can afford you.
Is that
to
a new
follow me.
haircut?
I like that.
That's a new
I don't
haircut.
think you can afford for
I
me
always
to follow
wanted.
you.
I always wanted like the
You need a lot of partners.
I can't afford you. I can't afford you to do that.
I always wanted like the music followed
try to
around
get
like,
Yona to do
like
it.
Shaft.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome. One of these days, I want to see Scott Morse walking down the downtown mall with the boombox on his shoulder,
Hey,
Well, that's like 80s.
dancing down the mall.
Like 80s.
I could see Scott doing that right there.
But, the good doctor was saying, and we've been talking about this for a while, that, the premise of our article was like that 3% wasn't a good thing. It's hurting everything. It's hurting the inventory. It's helping the people that got it to stay in it. But if you have a life change scenario that you have to move for whatever reason, it's a struggle on that. But the reality of it is inventory isn't getting better. We're not building it our way out of this. We're not even getting close to building a way out of it. And inventory is just going to stay anemic for quite a while. And you're going to see, I still stick to my prediction, by the end of this year, you're going to see low single digit across the board appreciation. You'll see some spots that will be a little bit lower, but all the way across the board, when we get to the end of this year and run our year-end numbers, I think you're going to see that.
Michael Mayhew, hello. He's giving you props.
Mule, what's up, baby? So I will say this, that I've put a lot of thought into the escalating value and kind of where it stops and how it stops. I don't think that single-digit appreciation is necessarily on the horizon. I think we are very much into, and at some price points, a future of haves and have-nots. I think it's a very scary prospect.
What's that mean?
It means if we can't build our way out of this. There's not enough new construction to get this done, and as rates continue to decline, the people who were there's going to be a bunch of people who were 3s or 3.5 or 4 that won't qualify to move from those properties at a higher rate. So those properties can't come on market unless they become renters. That as
Or they move out of the area.
or they have to move out of the area and they're renters in their new area, most likely, hypothetically. And then there is
That's interesting. That's an interesting phenomenon.
And
He's
then-
basically saying the folks that got a really good deal maybe right before COVID or early COVID, the homes appreciated considerably. They locked in a really good rate. Now they want to climb up the ladder and they realize that they potentially cannot achieve what they thought they could.
I disagree a little bit with that because Yona and I are having the same.
And he's saying that because of the cost of the debt service each
I'm
month
saying
being
so-
exponentially more, considerably more than what they locked
teachers,
in.
nurses, firefighters, your people who they're
Yeah, that I
they're-
agree with.
Yeah, they're
That I agree.
I'm
That I
saying,
100%.
all right, they are on a salaried income that
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
they're going to get a 5% increase each year, et cetera, whatever. That they're going to be limited even as rates come down compared to where they are.
Because the values went up.
In the ability to move forward.
So you're
think
chasing,
that's good stuff right
chasing an ever increasing value. Your income isn't increasing to make up the difference.
Alex Zerpe was on I Love Seville show yesterday. He had this statistic. The average salary year over year for an American, $4,300 less just because of inflationary pressure.
Well, let's look. So look.
You did absolutely nothing different. Worked the
So-
same hours, $4,300 less.
So 10,
surprised. I thought
so
that number would be
10,
higher.
15 years ago, what was the standard kind of like wage increase year over year? The 3% is kind of what was it?
Industry standard for a
Industry-
raise increase if you're working at any company in America is 3% year over year.
Okay, so think
3%
about that.
raise.
The reason
Which
that
was-
that
which was
3%
matching
existed
CPI
because it matched
time.
inflation. So you're never really getting a raise. You're being told that we're not going to pay you less than it costs to live in this current environment. So for business owners and everybody who's been going through the past year, what does that mean? Does that mean that in these years that your employees are getting 7 and 8% raises? Most of the time not. But in order for them to keep up with what we're seeing as far as in housing affordability and all these things, that's what I'm talking about, is the dynamic of your salaried individual, community service worker, provider, hero, however you want to call it, being able to continue to climb the housing ladder in the existing market.
Yeah. So
It's good stuff.
So everybody knows I spent a fair amount of my volunteer time on that very subject. And at the end of the day, and I believe it was either Michael Payne or Lloyd who said this a couple of Fridays, or I think it was last Friday, without substantial subsidy, it's just not going to happen, right? You're going to need substantial subsidy to kind of get in there because either by paying the cops and firemen and the teachers.
Down payment
More
support.
and
We were talking about that yesterday. Help them with the down payment assistance.
So let's say that. All right, let's say
I
I've
think
got
down payments is not even close.
Let's say I've got an option for that. This is less to. So, one of the goals is getting the non-homeowner into home ownership for a structured, not wildly increasing. Like you don't have to say it's not like with this rental market where it became, well, that was the old price, this is the new price. They're fixed, they own something, they're building equity. Getting those people in the game is one thing. What I'm saying is that for those that have bought in, have purchased something, are building some equity, that the likelihood of, we've already seen that the number of years that they're in a home is extended.
It was longer. Used to be 7, now closer to 10.
And I think that through the mechanics of what we've seen put people in homes over the past 3 years, that there's a very large likelihood that a lot of that inventory becomes trapped for longer due to
Increasing debt service costs.
debt service costs and them being able to take the next step. Now, will you see some people? No, there's this is America. They're going to accrue some of these people will accrue debts, and they may be able to cash out and stay in their home. And when I say cash out, I mean take a line of credit and pay off some of their existing debts, and then be forced into a higher mortgage, and that may give them some options moving forward depending on where their income goes in the future. But I think that there's definitely a bit of there's going to be a challenge in future years from what we went through previously. We got people who couldn't qualify at a certain level into homes that they won't be able to then step out of and qualify at a higher level.
Do you see what he's saying? He's basically saying the folks that bought a house in, say, 2 or 3 years ago, when the interest rates were like 2.5%, 3%, and the values of the real estate were 30% less, they now have this expectation of a 5,000 square foot brick Georgian with 4 or 5 bedrooms and 4.5 baths on a half acre with a backyard. And that expectation might not be reality today because the home values and the interest rates are a lot more. And that's going to force folks that own that property, that bought that kind of real estate a few years ago, to stay stickier in their house, which is going to impact the inventory scenario even more. Because these people realize that they got a hell of a deal 2 or 3 years ago, and now those hell of a deals ain't around as much anymore. That's what the dude's saying right there.
That is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's a phenomenon that we don't talk about, but that's a real phenomenon.
I'm talking to the inventory challenge.
That's the keep it up with the Joneses phenomenon.
So,
Which will in turn push valuations continuously higher.
100%.
yes.
So
And why it will
that's
push
what
back.
I'm talking about in a land of the haves and the have-nots.
That's a damn good talking point for a talk show right there. And why we'll put valuations higher is because it further throttles inventory. Limiting supply at the same demand means price point goes up. That's what you're saying.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
And according to NAR, last year, 39% of all the buyers were boomers. That's a 29% increase year over year.
And you guys got that sack of money.
Which then again pushes
adds
that
mo-
first tier.
So let's talk about that because I know those numbers very specifically. And
Just
I-
another example of boomers punching down on the rest of society.
Boomers.
I know we suck.
Boomers.
We suck.
Boomers. You boys both got to be careful because that's the number one demographic now for both your businesses over there is boomers.
Yeah, I don't know. We're up 33%.
Boomers.
We're up 33%.
You guys love boomers.
We're up 33%. That's all I know. So quarter over quarter. So I can add numbers to what Scott's talking about. So Lake Monticello, cheapest home available right now is $325. I know for a fact, in order to hit 80% AMI on a purchase, you cannot exceed $225,000 in purchase price. You cannot exceed that. And I know that because we did 23 of them last year.
Can't even buy in the villas at Southern Ridge for that.
Can't even buy for that. So back to the subsidy end of it, we're 100K short. So somebody is going to have to come, either the prices are going to come down, which I don't think anybody at this table thinks that's ever going to happen
No.
in the near future.
No.
Or for a very long period of time, if ever. So who's going to come up with that $100,000 shortfall? Right? So either they're going to,
Gift from family.
or they're going to end up, instead of 30% of their salary
50, 60?
it's 50, 60, 70%, and then that becomes a whole loan to value,
That's terrifying.
debt to income ratio, and all that kind of great stuff. So to your point, that's going to move on, but they're rolling off of the shelf, right? They're the minimum days on market. The medium days on market. Lake Monticello is back in the single digits. So.
Let me ask you this question, and this is a hypothetical question, and this might even involve Judah in this question too. So when does
I
the
believe that was a heads up.
that was a heads up. Yeah, thank you, Keith. You pick up on
I'm
that.
thinking
I
about
know.
that. Was a heads
Judah,
up.
did you?
How many long we were entering
long
into
time.
our
That was a
fourth
heads up.
year as you helped me with my math the other day.
If you're a young millennial or you're a Gen Zer and you're seeing everything like you just depicted, and I think a lot of people are, Scott, when do you become so demoralized that there's some kind of revolt against the system that's in front of them?
I'm not having this conversation.
Because that is unattainable for a lot of folks.
Yeah, so
if you're a Gen Zer that's a teacher or a nurse or a police officer, the likelihood of you being able to purchase some real estate is, how would you characterize percent? Impossible. Slim? I'd say slim.
So let's talk about this. So this is
Locally slim.
this is a perseverance thing. So it's interesting. So as everybody knows, I'm helping our daughter and son-in-law in Richmond, right?
Yeah.
They wanted to take a 2-week timeout, and we kind of said no, and we're not, right?
2-week timeout, and your son-in-law is a very well-paid doctor.
But they don't have cash,
No, but he's got doctor loans.
and they're competing.
with cash.
They're competing against folks back to this appraisal gap stuff and back to different locations. We did a cash deal. I won't talk about where, but in a part of pretty good part of Albemarle County. On the end of it, we got home inspection, we got septic inspection, we were making the sellers agreed to do a full physical survey. We got a ton of contingencies.
Because you had cash.
Could be, right? In different parts, it's the opposite. We're competing against multiple offers. We got to bring cash to the table to make up an appraisal gap, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So the micro locations matter. Having trusted advisors matter on that end of it, but they stayed in the game, and all of a sudden, because people are peeling off to take off for 2 weeks, we're getting really good shots at a couple of homes. We may not win, but we're now competing against 2 or 3 people instead of 30 people. I think a week from now, that 2 or 3 is going to go back to 30 because everybody who's took the time out is going to come back in. So now's the time to really stay engaged.
Well, if we see rates continue to come, you're going to put more people are going to be on and off the board.
But I don't think it's going to help inventory. I still stick by that.
I think we've got a long way to go to get there.
I do not think reduction of rate is going to help.
I think the most
Jerry's going to be right at that point.
advantageous thing for someone is so we've seen a lot with rates higher, even as they begin to decline, with valuations up and rates higher, we've seen a bulk of investors come off of the board unless it's an off-market property. So if we can find more properties that have deferred maintenance, that have some condition issues, that allow somebody to get in at a discount, but higher than what an investor wants to pay because they're not getting it for free, and free is, free.
Yeah,
that allows them to get in, get the repairs done, and have a house that they could live in and be closer to what that dream is. I think if that option is explored more for the first-time buyer, for the person who's trying to transition from one property to another, that puts more people in homes with better options than anything else.
So the secret sauce to that needs to get out that most buyers will freak out about, because what they're worried about, well, if I buy a house for $1, I put $2 into it, now it's worth $3. Am I now overvalued for the market? And this appraisal conversation was important to have to make sure that the buyer understands that you're not going to move forward unless the as is or the as built is good for the market at that given moment. Correct?
Correct.
So that's
what the point Brian Green's making. Brian Green, I believe you are Crozet. Is it Old Trail? Let us know. He says, and to Scott's point, the homes that are now 30% more expensive than a couple years ago are also a couple years older and may have, and most likely have, even more deferred maintenance.
That's a great comment because,
find someone, and if you're going to look for someone, Interstate Service Company, a home's best friend.
There you go.
But finding someone that can rehabilitate or remodel a home right now, you're months behind.
Well, and that's an absolute perfect thing to do. Interstate Service Company to help you with that. But let's talk about something just about HVAC, this 3-year difference, right? We are actually working on a couple of listing transactions that we have going on that the average life expectancy of a heating and air unit is 10 years, right? That's the average, right? So if you were like at 8 years, 3 years ago, now you're over, and I'm now starting to see agents, because they should be doing this, actually look at the serial number. There's a date on it when the unit was produced. So it could take a few minutes to determine how old the system is. You don't need an engineer or an HVAC person to do that. You just got to be able to read a number.
Yes, but there's nothing that I find more irritating than a home inspector who rattles a customer by saying the HVAC is at the end of its life expectancy.
Yeah.
You're probably going to have to replace this tomorrow. It's like, is it working, bro? Because I've got one at my house that's 20 years old.
And so mine are 20, and because we service them twice a year and they last longer, but technically and the inspector has to do that. It's part of their licensing.
There's ways
how
they go about it makes a difference.
I agree. We can get into this debate offline at some time. I hate.
I mean, I think we could have a therapy group with every agent and car about home inspectors managing expectations the right way.
No, it's worse than that.
When it comes to their clients.
It's worse.
Because some spook them, and they don't need to.
It's worse than that. It's the way the home inspection addendum is written. is actually that needs to get fixed, but that's a soapbox.
Why? Because that spooks the customer?
Well, it gives the buyer the ultimate right to get out for any reason, and it specifically talks on the front end of it that the only things that should be inspected are material defects, and to Scott's point, if it's working, it cannot be it cannot be, if it's functioning.
It can be utilized as leverage in the deal.
But then there's a sign at a sentence at the end of it, but the buyer at their sole discretion can terminate for any reason. So it's become a real problem, and someday we'll do a debate with Donna and a bunch of other folks about.
Love you, Donna
about
Patton.
this.
If you're watching Donna Patton, let us know. Neil Williamson, I'll get to this question here shortly. First, Jason Howard. If you can't trade up, he's the king of Rio for Scott and Keith. If you can't trade up due to a low rate, where does that money go instead of the new house's higher mortgage? Upgrades to the existing home, spending on restaurants or other experiences, saving a larger down payment for when you finally can qualify for the next rung on the housing ladder? That's a great question.
So you and I are in that.
That's a
same
great
boat.
question.
Well, let Scott tackle it first.
So one more time. 'cause
He's saying if you can't trade up because the debt service is that expensive, and check out excellent work, Judah, because the debt service is more expensive, where does that saving go? The folks that got the 2.75%, the 3%, that got the good deal on a home that's 30% less of where the market is now, 3 points lower than where the market is now, does that additional income find its way into the local economy? If so, how? Does it go into investment property, money on Main Street with coffee shops and restaurants? Where does it go?
I mean, I guess that depends on your individual person or family and how they have their expenses set up. Certainly, there will be people who retire at earlier years than others, and there's people who like having, all the things all the time. I think that's too broad of a brush to paint with for each as an individual. I'm talking about as across the board. I think there is there's a group of those people who are always going to be challenged based on fixed income. There'd be people who also the police and fire who in their spare time run a construction business, like there's income outside of the norm. Certainly for every one of those, there's probably 3 or 4 that don't do that. So that goes, I don't know how I answer that question.
As the son of a New York City fireman, my father always had 3 or 4 jobs, and that's what you needed to do because you sure as hell weren't doing it for the salary on that end of it. It's interesting, and this may be this 39% boomer thing going on, but Yona and I are having the same conversation. A property around the corner for us went under contract for $700,000, and we're putting an apartment in our basement, and we were having this exact debate yesterday, actually. Should we spend the extra $150,000?
I don't think you should.
Well, then
I don't think you should.
I understand that. So to Scott's point, if I'm looking at it from dollars and stuff
Granted,
like that.
I'm just a guy that sits across from you for a talk show and should have absolutely no say. And obviously, I have no say
So
of what you do with your personal residence. I'm sorry I interjected my opinion in that fashion. I apologize sincerely.
Wow.
But the reason
Hold it. That's a
said I'm
sizzle reel.
sorry.
Mark that down. That is a sizzle reel.
The only reason I did is
No, stop. Mark that.
The only reason I
Hold it,
did is
hold it.
because
It
you
is-
brought it up
Oh,
before.
no. I'm writing this down.
Jerry said, I'm sorry.
10:55. Well, give it 10:54, Judah.
The time is different.
There-
It doesn't go by the
Sizzle
clock.
Oh, it doesn't go by a clock.
It doesn't
Got
go
it.
by the clock on your
Got
watch.
it.
But it's a rough estimate.
3650.
36.50.
36 There we go. Judah Wickhauer's been waiting 12 years for that sizzle reel.
And I want that emailed to me, and I'm going to play it every couple of minutes. Thank you.
The only reason I interjected was
I'm only
because
kidding. I'm
you've
only
brought it up in the past,
Yeah.
the $150,000 basement apartment.
Yeah. So to your point, prior to that 700,000, I was thinking.
Am I pricing myself out? That's what you were thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now I'm not.
Oh no, the comp down the street justifies the 150 on the basement.
But as Scott knows, because he knows my family very well.
What if
this?
if your parents move into the house with you?
Well, this is a real thing.
Oh, I know it is.
So this
I know it
decision
is.
is not necessarily a fiscal one,
No,
right? Now we're very blessed to be able to do this.
absolutely.
But this is a fiscal thing. But you also got to think about it because prior to that sale, I was like, oh man, do I really want to do this? Now it's a different story, right? It's a different story.
And the scenario would be his parents sell in the lake. They also live at Lake Monticello and move into a $150,000 super deluxe in-law suite basement apartment where they wouldn't have to see Keith in his tighty whities every single day.
Oh, I'm supposed to wear tighty whities?
I don't want to know. I don't want to know.
No.
So, I mean, this-
let me finish this. As my mother refers,
I
as
don't wanna
Tina
know.
refers to it, you're not freaking sticking me in the basement, are you?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mom. You're
love
going
you,
in the
Tina.
basement.
So, I mean, when you look at the lake in general, so
$700,000. Can you believe that?
6 years ago, if you were a super nice new build on the water, you were $600K.
There you go.
And now those same houses are selling for $1 million.
Yep.
So
We've had a home trade on the water over $1 million this year at the lake.
Yep.
I know, which to me is, bonkers.
Bonkers.
No, that's because we've been there.
It's because I grew
Forever.
up there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like,
He's not throwing shade. It's just because he grew up
We're
there.
not throwing a little bit of shit.
Yeah.
But,
But the point that
Just
I'm
trying to help you.
Give
you an out right
I'm
there.
just like I'm
You're
speechless
flabbergasted.
about your statement. I
Flabbergasted.
can't get it past my little brain. Thank
Yeah,
you so much.
flabbergasted.
for doing that. And I almost wore that shirt today. So
How about this from Kevin? Kevin, often the bear, and Kevin, we kid because we care, and we certainly appreciate your viewership. He says, where does it stop? He says a quarter acre is going to be nearing $1 million in the city or the county.
so he's
Where does it stop? Is what he's saying.
spot on to the conversation Yona and I had
He
yesterday.
said every 900 square foot home in the city on a quarter acre cannot be $1 million. Where does it stop?
It
When does it stop?
stops when the market no longer supports it. It stops when people stop buying it.
No, I get that. but when does that stop? But when does that happen?
Yvonne, go
When
ahead.
does that happen?
Where are the mechanics for the ceiling? So and how much inventory continues to exist. So more inventory stops it. You're not going to get more inventory on the land, and then upzoning in the city is only going to all these density things. I know they're saying that they're doing it to make things more affordable. And my opinion is you're going to make units more affordable. You're not going to make the land more affordable.
Dude, 100%.
you are-
so obvious.
Yeah, you are.
And because the land has an opportunity with upzoning, the land's going to be more expensive. So the person that buys the land has a higher debt service clip or a more expensive barrier of entry. So because they have a higher barrier of entry or more expensive debt service, they have to do something that drives profit to cover that debt service, which is going to make whatever they create more expensive.
and you might want
This
to.
is so obvious. Is this not so
I
obvious?
got the Captain
Scott?
Obvious socks.
I
on.
mean, I'm not very smart.
This is so obvious.
You might want to tease the Friday after Easter.
And then the crappy part about it
Oh, he's
is
going.
you're just going to have, I know, this is the
He's
kind of
going.
stuff that pisses me off. This pisses me off. The crappy part about
So, hey,
this
Judah,
is
how you doing?
you're just going to have a bunch of more folks here that can afford the more expensive things. And it's
So
just
let-
going to be busier and more crowded.
Hit the air
Don't
brakes.
you think?
Yeah, but so the one thing that I think that the one thing that Charlottesville isn't seeing will be constraint, or there'll be more winner, or there'll be fewer winners and more losers in the restaurant mecca that we have here.
No doubt, because there's not going to be any labor.
Yeah.
No one's going to be able to afford to live here.
And so you'll see that, or you'll see more food trucks. That'll be kind of a piece of the puzzle there. So you'll see, instead of like the downtown mall and a lot of these areas being stationed with lots of really good little restaurants.
There's going to be a few that are expensive.
It's going to be a few that are expensive, and then the others will get pushed to food trucks, and and you look at other
1,000% agree with what he's saying.
So I can add to that.
Look at other
completely agree with what he's saying.
Go look at other areas and decide if that's what you're really trying to model yourself.
Been
after,
saying
'cause
this for years,
that's what
exactly
you're
this
gonna
right
get.
here.
So I can add a little bit to that. I can't give specific names, but there's a local business owner that has a shop here that wants to buy, he wants to own instead of paying rent. In here, he has businesses all over the state. And he talked to me yesterday. He goes, "Tell me how a pizza store, a pizza shop, can afford these rents." that you can't sell. You just have.
Well, let's talk about that. How does a pizza shop in Manhattan afford it? In 2-3 million, because if you got enough people. Here's the problem: if you got enough people coming in and out, you can sell a slice of pie for $3 a piece, and you can have people lined up at the door. But if you don't have people lined up at the door, then you got a problem. And what we're doing is we're pushing people further and further away. They're going to have to commute.
So we're back to houses now.
They're going to have to commute into we're going to have to commute into these areas, and there's nobody. You don't have the population to line up at the door.
So that's why. When we get to Friday, Greene County's quarter over quarter price increase is 17%. Fluvanna County's quarter over quarter is 10%. And downtown Charlottesville is in the negative on it. So back to the pizza guy, he was 100% right. He was like, you have to sell so many pizzas, have so many people come through. Look, I've said this before. Dave Norris is coming on not this Friday, but next Friday.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be healthy. I'm going to go get some pizza for lunch.
Pizza sounds great. Vita Nova right over there. Have you had it? Right around the corner from the studio? It's fantastic. Father-son shop, A+.
So I just talked to Judah.
Fabio's is good. Dave Norris.
Dave Norris.
We're listening to Dave Norris.
Look, I'm really trying to manage my ADD here.
You're doing a great job. How about this one from Spencer? I grew up in the Belmont Hogwaller area. Houses, when I was growing up, were selling for under $100,000. Now, to your point, those same houses are trading for $750,000, $850,000, in some cases $900,000. When I was growing up, my neighborhood was an area you didn't want to walk after dark unless you knew the folks that lived there. Now I walk around Belmont, and all I see is folks going to restaurants at $200 and $300 tabs. It's changed quite a bit.
So back to...
I used to live on Little Graves in Belmont, and 208 Little Graves behind Spud Nuts, now Quality Pie. The house, I was the first house on the left. Me and 3 buddies could barely afford to live here. I've told this story before. One of our 4 buddies had a rope ladder to the attic, and he charged like $170. We charged him to rent there, so we could shave $180. That way, the 3 of us got $60 off.
Did you provide the rope?
He did. He did it all. Created it all himself. The house all the way down the street from us had this shed at the end of Little Graves. This was old school Belmont as it was transitioning. And the shed was this like 3-generation family there. They had a pool table in the shed and a fridge full of Budweiser. And they were doing some sketchy stuff because I was there from time to time in that shed. That shed in that house now is like an $850,000 home.
Well, the next door to the right above Spud Nuts, that was the first house to sell for over $1 million 4 years ago.
In Belmont. Unbelievable. You're talking a working class neighborhood 20 years ago. Literally a working class neighborhood 20 years ago. Now, $1 million homes.
Is marketed to be, you can be close to the downtown mall and the restaurants and come spend the monies.
And that's Yancey's point.
So
quarter acre in the city is $1 million.
So back to Keith and Yona, right? Right. That's where if I'm going to move somewhere, that's where I'm going to move.
You want to go to Belmont?
I want to downsize, not upsize, right? I want something smaller. I want to be able to walk to wherever, because that's what I want to do. And, if we sell our home and if we end up with a substantial amount of cash reserve, I'm in a better position to buy than the first-time home buyer. But back to this, as you refer to it, upzoning, I call it the zoning rewrite. Look, I do not think, and time will tell if I'm wrong, and I'll bet somebody, maybe a mustache.
Well, you're winning the Neil Williamson bet. He's watching.
I think I may.
And Jon Snow says the best Boston Central Virginia is on the set right now. Jon Snow literally says, tell your viewers and listeners that Scott Morris is a great Boston friend.
Thank you.
And he cares about people.
I do like people. People are very nice. And
He
John,
cares about people.
I'm glad you're on the team. And if you're a LO and you want a different work experience or environment, I got a place for you to come have a conversation.
And I want to give props to
Good
my
plug.
man Jon Snow, running marathons and races and posting gains in the gym, and absolutely closing deals as a loan officer. Jon Snow, you got the kind of energy that I like to be around, my friend. I find it contagious.
I'm up. Am I
You're up.
Yeah.
I'm up.
Yeah.
I want to give props to my boy John.
Yeah,
Snow.
no, John's a rock star. The thing is this rezoning, upzoning, whatever you want to call it, it is not going to increase the volume in great numbers anytime soon, if at all.
And you've explained that to the folks.
And you are not going to see, and you're not going to see 50,000 all of a sudden multiply by 2, 3, or 4. If we over time see, below 5,000 units, which is a substantial number, but it's just not going to move the needle forward. And to Michael Payne's point, you can't build. You could build yourself way out of that, but you'd have to build so many. It's a subsidy. It's this $100,000 difference that you need today. And as interest rates drop down, that number can go up a little bit, right? That 225 can maybe go closer to 250 as rates drop down. But I can tell you, just to make those 23, this is a stat that blew my mind. We had to go between 10 to 15 buyers just to produce one, right? Just to cross the line to make it work because of credit history and so forth and so on to get in there. So it's going to be a heavy lift to go ahead and hit that. I do have a question for Scott, though.
Ooh, go ahead.
That question was asked yesterday of an agent of me, and I wanted to throw it your way. So we're back to these home inspections being waived, right? It's block to block, house to house, location to location. Sometimes they're doing it, sometimes they're not. But on an FHA and a VA loan, talk about what the appraisal difference is with that, and does the buyer get a little protection from that if there's something substantially wrong with the home? Does that question make sense? So I waived a home inspection, but I'm doing an FHA at VA. The home inspector, the appraiser also does a safety inspection, correct?
Correct.
So,
Yes.
well,
So
correct-
they're looking for
educate
items
me.
that they could consider unsafe. So peeling paint, loose deck boards, exposed wiring, broken windows, items that could be related to safety or condition to a certain extent.
So they walk in and
minimal.
there's black mold on the wall or something like that.
Black mold on the wall
Interstate
would,
Service Company.
would
Interstate
probably,
Service
Best
Company.
would probably result in them requesting that someone licensed, not of their level, come take a look at it.
Sure.
Most of these items will. They could say that we believe that the roof is leaking or there was a leak there at one point.
So this is the appraiser saying
The
this.
appraiser saying, because the appraiser is protecting the value for the bank that is lending on it, saying, they're there to say, this home, assuming that this is not a live leak, given the age of what the roof appears, a roofer should come out and look at the condition and say that everything's okay.
And if the roofer says no, what happens next?
Then they're going to say that this house is worth X value, subject to this repair taking place.
So then the reason I'm bringing it up is I'm wondering what impact that does on the seller, right? So the veteran, I know for sure, has the right to terminate the contract at that point. Is that correct?
Correct.
Right? Is it the same with the FHA?
Well, for the FHA, let's say that's not a right to terminate, but the lending
You
institution
just won't get the
says-
money.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Therefore, the
finance
the finance
contingency would kick in
kicks in.
and protect
Thank you for clarifying that. The reason I brought it up because it was explained to me that some agents or some folks are using that as a kind of a backstop around home inspections, and I'm not so sure that either makes sense or doesn't make sense.
I mean, so in theory, so the appraisal report is what, 5 pages long? You're not going to get the same quality for the. My belief is that they should always at least get for informational purposes only, get a booklet that shows where your water turnoff is, where all of these things are, so that, in that moment of crisis, you can, when your water heater starts leaking and you're going, where did I put this booklet that's got where the water shut off is because they don't remember. There's the things that people aren't going to remember, and it's nice to have that to refer to, and then be able to go through and see what a lot of the
So,
stuff looks
so you're
like.
getting on my soapbox because I hate the term "for informational purposes only." If you do not cross out the right of the buyer to terminate the contract, then it is a pass or fail. So if you truly, so we're bidding, when we're helping people and bidding for informational purposes only, I put in other terms. This is for the informational purposes of the client only. We do not wish to use it to terminate. We cross out all that kind of stuff on it. To your expense, to your point is, it's
I'm just talking about
an education for a home.
yeah.
Oh, totally. Well,
I am not here to say that I am
I
helping
just-
the agent write a contract.
that question kind of put me on my heels a little bit, and I thought I'd ask you of it. I just wasn't exactly sure how to respond to
in
it.
theory, it's not a bad thing. Do I think it gives enough information to the client? No, but is there an existing out there? Yes. Do I think, but then we get into this whole bias of financing bias by listing agents saying, I don't want to accept that offer if this is what everybody out there is doing.
That's exactly right.
So,
That's exactly right.
but that my number one question when I even suss that out. So one of the things that I like to instill in all my partners and clients is that I am going to call the listing agent upon you making an offer and talk about strength of buyer and all of the reasons that you are number one. But if
That goes a long way,
If
by
I
the
for a second kind of have the inclination that they go, oh, well, this is VA, and I feel that there's like them poo-pooing that at all. Well, what about the appraisal? Are there things that you're not telling us about the house? And the number one answer is, oh, no, of course not. Then what are you worried about?
Yeah, so what you're referring
and
to.
if this is escalated up, I've got the ability to go to the VA and talk about why this property is unique and special, along with comps that I'm assuming that you're going to be able to provide me, being that you know that it's worth this much money, and get a reconsideration of value outside of just what the appraiser is coming up with.
Nice.
As vets and as disabled vets,
That's why you guys want to
hate
work
that.
with a guy like Scott.
I hate that. I absolutely hate that.
You go to the bat, is what he's saying.
100%.
That's why you want to work with a guy like Scott. Here's a very interesting comment. Grayson, I appreciate you commenting on the show often. And he does more on, Grayson, why are you doing more on Real Talk than the I Love Seagull show? Just throwing that out there, Grayson. He says this.
Probably
you guys,
eating lunch.
You guys often talk about the difficulties for first-time home buyers, but why shouldn't the narrative also be those of us that are homeowners are appreciating more equity and have a better opportunity to retire like we want? He's basically saying this is not a bad thing.
So, yeah, you're right for some of you, but I think, again, I will repeat, that goes back to the question about where does all the other money go, and does it go back into the community, to coffee shops, to restaurants? Are people planning better for retirement? Yes, some people are gaining more equity. Some people are going back into the equity of the home, either for repairs of the home, for credit that they've liabilities that they've grown over the years. Some people are going to be able to do that, and some people are not you. And this is, that's kind of a theme that we're going to continue to see, given that the people who don't gain that equity with the ability to retire, at least will have the option to use some of that money as a parachute to help get them out of credit problems as they come along with the rising interest rates that we're going to see. But I think you're going to see more of that in the short term than the long term, but not everybody is Grayson. Not everybody is a responsible, meticulous retirement building machine.
What do you make of that comment?
So, that's a Captain Obvious thing, right? Because otherwise, that is, truth. The truest thing that's ever been said on the show. But I want to go back to this 3% because, and it took me a little while to register this, but we're actually helping a couple of sellers that are exactly having that same conversation where they're saying, hey, I'm at 3%. I got to sell, but I don't know. I'm afraid to buy. I don't know what to do. I actually created a spreadsheet that we're sitting down with folks at the at their kitchen table. I did one yesterday, and we're saying, okay, great, time out. Let's take a look at it. You bought the house 5 years ago. It's appreciated X amount of dollars. This is what you're looking at. We talked to Scott. This is, if you bring this amount of money down to that, where are you ending up with the dollar, what you're paying per month? And a couple of them a little high, a couple of them a little low, but there is some math scenarios there where you walk away with enough capital from the sale of your home, assuming you've been there long enough, right? If you bought in the last 12 to 24 months, that's not going to happen. But if you've bought before that and you have a little bit of equity and you can bring more cash to the table to buy, and depending what your loan amount is, it might be pretty close, and being willing to take that step. And we've actually done that with a couple of folks, and they've made that step to, okay, now we're going to put the house on the market and let's go find something. Because, it was a very low percentage difference on their monthly payment because they brought so much cash to the table. So I know this is a math formula that you have to figure out. This is why you need trusted advisors. Pull down the tab at Keith Smith.
RealTalkWithKeithSmith.com.
Pull down the tab and do that. You're staring at the feed, so that means there's a question there.
The comments, people just appreciate the discussion. Cool. And multiple folks are somewhat dispirited and saying it's never going to stop here.
Yeah, that was a conversation Yona and I had yesterday. I mean, this is business. We were like, okay, if we're going to put 150 grand in, is the 700 the cap in my neighborhood, or is it going to be 710, 720? What's going to happen?
So, I think
but we're paying down our principal so rapidly, it doesn't matter.
With the basement, the improved, the larger lot, that continues to see exponential growth, and all of the original ranchers that came in the early 1980s, those have a limited amount of growth as far as.
But you're seeing a lot of renovation work on, though, a lot of extensions, put on a lot of growth in it. To Scott's point,
I think the improvements there are going to be less. There's less appreciation value to those properties than the larger home that's what people want.
I think the dollar amount would be higher in the smaller homes. I think my dollar amount would be less. I find it hard.
Why do you think that?
Because of the number. To Scott's point, I'm in a bit of a unique neighborhood, right? I got 1 acre. I've actually got 2 acres inside of Lake Monticello. The story behind that was that's where all the spoils from the subdivision went, and I couldn't let anybody else build a house on it, so I built it for myself. Literally, that's
was that used as the junkyard?
Well, the spoils, when you start stripping the root mat
gotcha.
off and all that kind of great stuff, it needs to go somewhere.
Because he developed the acres, guys, for those that don't know.
And so
Lake Monticello. It's a neighborhood of Lake Monticello.
A little bit of lesson I learned on that, by the way. I thought I was smart. I had the surveyor shoot the existing grade before we put it on there, but he inverted his numbers, and I thought it was 8 foot. I go, this is perfect. I can build a thing. It was freaking 18-foot difference. So my house is sitting on top of 9 feet of stone before I put the foundation on. So I think
that's good, right?
Hey, there's some really nice trees around your house.
I know. I wonder why.
There's like a privacy area.
I wonder why.
Really nice trees.
You got a great house.
I had him. We got rented a spade, and he went ahead and moved trees.
Just pluck trees all around.
Scott, for those who don't know, Scott used to work for Keith back in the day.
And they didn't die, which surprised the hell out of me.
Builder and a developer. And they still talk to this day.
Well, I'm starting not to. I'm learning out what I paid him and he didn't do. I'm starting to rethink this talking.
Hey, some of the stuff you paid me to do, I did 2 or 3 times.
But
I paid you.
Did you volunteer, or did Keith tell you to do it?
No.
All the above?
No. What he's talking about is
I know what he's talking about. We appreciate the comments that are coming in, the dynamic nature of the show. Why don't we give our boy Scott Morris a chance to close with Valissa Fox giving you props.
Valissa, how are you? I've been ringing this bell. If it's challenging, just keep getting up, keep going through it, trust your team. It's not going to stop. There's not enough inventory to support a less challenging environment, and as we kind of continue on this trajectory, a downward trend of rates, we're going to we're going to put more people on the board, and it'll continue to be competitive. Just know that there's some options out there for you, and if you've got, if you're in a situation where you're renting somewhere, we can explore finding a property that has some conditions or some deferred maintenance possibilities where we can get a deal and get some work done with a renovation loan that could open up your options and give you some things that you might not get if you were searching for them brand new in the first place.
Well said. Scott Morris, Ross Mortgage's finest. Keith Smith.
To your point, as we've been sitting here, 2 went off of the new and went into pending. So new on the market went down by 2, pending went up in 2 in an hour and some odd minutes. But to Scott's point, you know, persistence pays off, and it will. You know, just to speak of our daughter, she texted me something as I was sitting here. She seriously wanted to take a look at a 650 square foot house in Richmond that's on the market for $350.
650?
650. But
She's got a child.
No. So as a trusted advisor, AKA father, no. We're going to keep on going.
Keep on going. Keep on keeping on.
Keep on keeping on.
Keep on keeping on. Judah Wickower, Keith Smith, Scott Morris. My name is Jerry Miller. This is Real Talk with Keith Smith, presented by Ross Mortgage. Find Real Talk with Keith Smith online at realtalkwithkeithsmith.com. The I Love Seville show is up in approximately 1 hour.
Friday, some numbers and maybe some bunny rabbit ears might be on set.
Friday, the Easter Bunny is coming, and the following Friday is Dave Norris.
Dave Norris.
And Deshaun Cooper.
That's exactly right.
Fantastic. Judah, thank you. We'll catch you guys in 1 hour. Take care. Bravo. Bravo. Let us know when the mics are off. What's the...